Welcome to this episode of Behind the Bars podcast, my first ever episode with a guest. Today's guest is a man that you may not have heard of, but a man who has inspired a lot of people you have heard of. A man who, at the age of 9 and at the age of 30, had to learn how to walk again after 2 horrific dirt bike accidents. But he's not here for sympathy or empathy. He's here to inspire. His story is extremely humbling, inspirational, and motivating. And the power of positive thinking is a cliched term, but this guy does epitomize all of that. It's a wonderful chat. And I thank Mitch for being the first guest. And welcome to Mitch Tripney. Well, after a few first dawns, I'm finally here with my first ever guest on Behind the Bars podcast. I would like to welcome and thank you, Mitchell Tripney. Trip, how goes you?
Mate, thanks for having me on. It's been a long time in the making, mate, but I've been excited. I know the caliber of guests you're going to have on, so to start it off for you is pretty special, mate.
Yeah, well, thanks, mate. We've been chatting a long time, and I know you've done a bit of your own podcasting as well, and you've got a really kind of crazy story. Like, I always thought all my guests were going to be really big and famous names in the action sports world, but I wanted to kind of start with your story and your precautionary tale about the other side of freestyle motocross. And it's not all sunshine, rainbow, and lollipops, but I want to start with one simple question that I'm going to ask every one of my guests. Who is Mitchell Tripney?
First and foremost, in 2026, I'm a dad. That's all that matters to me now. My kids and my fiance are my absolute world. So to be able to have made such a good recovery is a crucial part of my family story and my story in general. So that's who I am. I'm a freestyle motocross absolute fanatic. I lived my version of the dream for a very little period of time, but I mean, when you look at life, if it's going to be 80, 90, 100 years, freestyle motocross is a pretty small part of even your top professional athlete's life. So that's who I am, and I'm very lucky to have got to do, the shows I got to, and to travel a little bit for riding my dirt bike and make a little bit of money doing that. That was pretty special to me.
We can't start by just giving away your full story. I want to start at the beginning. Where did Trip grow up, and how did his love for dirt bikes start?
Yeah, so first of all, first house I was sort of brought into was in a little ghetto area called Mill Park. It's a bit sketchy. We moved from there when I was 6, but that's where my love for dirt bikes started. One of Mum's family friends, her son he's older than me, like a fair bit older than me. He might have been 19, 20 or something at the time, but I think he was doing a runner from the cops on his dirt bike, and he basically hid it in our backyard for a few weeks, and I'd just finish daycare or whatever it was, and I'd go out the back and just sit on his old clapped out XR 600 or whatever it was, and it was all spray painted black, so he was like a militia fan, and so I'd just sit on that, and then it was like right around the time of like Crusty 1 and 2, like those eras. And Mum and Dad brought me those VCRs, like the videotapes, and we'd watch them, and I'd go out and sit on this bloke's motorbike and pretend I was doing buddy heel clickers and knack-knacks, things like that. So I think that's sort of where my love started.
We're going to talk about your kind of major accident from a few years ago, but you had another pretty ordinary run-in with a dirt bike when you were 9 years old. Tell us about your kind of first brush with death.
Yeah. So, I got pretty close to dying. My family was told basically, like, go and say your goodbyes. But where we lived, once we moved from Mill Park, we moved to it was a bit of a country town back then. It's pretty overgrown now, but it was called Diamond Creek, and where we lived, we had an acre block, so I could sort of ride my little QR and my JR80 in the backyard. And then from like directly over the road, there was probably 60 or 80 acres of just vacant land, and we kind of made our way in there with our dirt bikes. And a couple of the boys up the road brought bikes once I had them, and we just cut our own tracks in over there, and a lot of truck drivers or whatever would just dump dirt in there because it was like free dumping, I suppose. But so I'd be riding my dirt bikes over there, and I joined a motorbike club called Whittlesea Township Motorbike Club, which is still like in my local area, and we made friends there. And those boys would come over whenever they heard the fellas up the road riding in these paddocks. And at the time, I didn't have my dirt bike running, or for some reason, I was just on foot at this point. So me and my two mates, Andy and Mick, we went over to watch these fellas ride their bikes, and I got a phone call from my mum. Like I said, I was only 9 at the time, and I had her old clapped out Ericsson flip phone. She rang me and said, dinner's ready. Can you boys come home? So we started running back, and I don't know the full story. I don't think anyone really does, but we were running back, and the blokes that we were watching come flying down the hill on this KX 250, and the grass was obviously pretty slippery, and he saw us at the last minute, and I'm assuming the other two went one way, I went the other. He might have thought that we were going to stay in the middle, and he's cleaned me up, and almost sent me to God in that short instance. And fractured all the front of my skull, punctured both my lungs. I had bleeding coming out of my ears, and what they call, I think it was contusions to the brain, or maybe it was contusions to the lungs. But the plan was to get me helicoptered straight to the Royal Children's and thrown on life support and put in a coma and whatnot. But I think that we had to, the helicopter was busy or whatever. But anyway, it turned out to be an ambulance trip to the Austin, and they stabilised me there, which probably saved my life. And I think the next night maybe I was transported to the Royal Children's and sat in a coma for 12 days. So it was a bit of a gnarly story.
This is at 9 years of age, might I add. So how I understand why this maybe didn't soften your love for dirt bikes, but how did your mother let you get back on a dirt bike? What did you have to do to allow that to happen?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know, like if I was to put myself in her shoes, I don't really know how I could let my child throw a leg back over a bike. But I really think that Mum just saw the passion that I had for dirt bikes, and the ambition to like I wanted to be a Crusty Demons rider. This is before Nitro Circus and all those touring companies, Freestyle Kings, stuff like that was around. It was all just Crusty Demons, and like there was no other option for me, but I was going to be a Crusty Demons, like whether my mum or dad let me or not. It was that was my goal, and eventually they let me get back on the bike, and I think it was probably about 4 months after my injury. So it was I think the recovery I made was somewhat abnormal and almost superhuman to the doctor's predictions. That mum and dad thought, oh, like maybe we just let him, like we've given him the opportunity to choose his own path to this far. Like it's kind of, you can't go back on your word, maybe. So we played other sports,
Do you think that passion for dirt bikes aided in that recovery, and your kind of want and will and maybe by the sounds of it need to get back on a dirt bike may have helped you kind of progress? Like you had to learn how to walk again, you had to learn how to use your brain properly, and it was all for the purpose of getting back on a dirt bike when you were 9.
Yeah, that was definitely the goal. And I remember asking the doctors when can I go back on my dirt bike? And they sort of said, mate, you got to learn how to walk again and eat and feed yourself, stuff like that first. And so I definitely think that having something to work for, which was obviously to get back on my bike and to go and play football with me mates and stuff like that, that was the driving force to get better and have a really good and healthy recovery. So, things like that. It's having something to work towards. Everyone likes, getting something rather than having something. So earning it rather than just having it handed to you. And for me to earn my recovery to get back on my bike was so special.
Yeah, it's mad. Hey, I know you've got 1,000,001 questions for me, but this is my podcast. You have told me that
Yeah,
Crusty Demons DVD series in your teenage years saved your life in another way. Tell us about that, if you don't
yeah.
mind.
So yeah, I for sure. I think that that particular brain injury sort of triggered a few mental health issues for myself at from the age of sort of 9, 10, and so on and so forth. And I just wasn't aware of what it was. Um, and I got bullied and whatnot for the dint in my head, let's call it, from that injury, because the surgeons had to bust my skull open to relieve all the pressure from my brain. I got teased a lot for that, and I sort of obviously I took it to heart being such a young kid,
Mm.
but there was a particular segment that was on a current affair that I believe sort of saved my life. And that was when Jackson Strong was, let's call it, inducted into the Crusty Demons. He had his segment on a current affair of where he backflipped his CRF 250 at like the age of 15 or something in a Crusty show. Um, and yeah, like to see that there was, not just a kid my age that could live my dream, but someone from like the next state over, like, was pretty surreal. So it was like, all right, let's focus on that, and let's try and prove people wrong. If they want to doubt me for whatever it may be, let's use that as motivation. So I sort of learned then how to turn almost negative thoughts into a positive fuel, and that was something I've done ever since then. So yeah, like I've still had down days, and still like I'm medicated for depression and anxiety, stuff like that. But I think I've just found a way to use it for a better, use it as a better source for what I actually want in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're gonna get to your accident in a minute, but it's almost like what happened
Yeah,
in your 9-year and teenage years prepared you for the kind of the biggest fight of your life. So what I might just skip a few things I wanted to chat about. We'll go back because I think it's a good natural
for sure.
segue to February 4th, 2023. Mitch Tripp, he is 30 years 30 years of age, kind of
Something along those.
coming to the end of a, not the most decorated FMX career. Let's call it that. A guy extremely passionate about dirt bikes. He'd landed his first flip, just became a new dad. What happened on that day?
Yeah, so I kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve in freestyle motocross, which was I just wanted to do one backflip, get that off my back, and then I was going to be happy. So I kind of hung the boots up, knew that I was having a kid, in the near future anyway. So we've done that, and the opportunity come up to ride a show in front of my son, and I thought, like, that'd be just another cool thing to tick off the bucket list. So I sort of took the opportunity. I hadn't really ridden freestyle in a long time, and I thought we'll just go and we'll have a crack. I don't care if I do 3 tricks, as long as my son sees, as long as I get to hold my son after it, like that. That's all I wanted to achieve. And yeah, so we loaded the family up in the van, and off we went. And it was in a little country town called Echuca. And yeah, I went out to ride practice that morning, and the down ramp was just horrendous, the worst I've seen. And you know, a lot of people now would think I'm completely stupid for jumping to it, because there was an inflatable airbag down ramp right next to it. And we all chose to go the hardcore option and jump to dirt, and stay true to freestyle motocross, I suppose. And yeah, that my first jump of the day, I wanted to go a little bit long so that I didn't come up short and break my ankles, where ankles heal pretty bloody good. I've broken them a couple of times. But yeah, so I went a bit long, and that little bit long went way too long. I sort of looked down at the apex of the jump, and I saw that I was, past the knuckle of the down ramp. And I thought that if I'd stayed on the bike in this moment, my body positioning was so bad, I was going to basically smash my head on the handlebars and break my neck, and possibly become a quadriplegic. And it's crazy. in that 3 to 4 seconds you get in the air, you can think of a whole scenario. You know your surroundings. So I thought I was basically going to break my neck, rip the throttle on, hit the fence. So that's 2 impacts, and then flip over the fence, land in the spoon drain with a spinal cord injury already. So that's 3 impacts in one accident. And I thought the safest thing for me to do was basically eject from the bike and slide down the down ramp. Well, the down ramp was far too mellow to even slide. Once I'd landed, I basically just bounced and flipped, and I exploded my L1 vertebrae, which is about belly button height. And that basically left me with a broken back and a spinal cord injury. So once I was laying on my back, from my belly button down towards my toes, just felt like I was wrapped in cotton wool. And my dream of riding a dirt bike show in front of my son was completely shattered because he wasn't even there then. He was back at home with his mum having a nap. So, yeah, I was left heartbroken and back broken.
I'm glad you can make a joke about it. How, at the time, in real time, how bad did you think or know it was?
Can I swear?
Fuck yeah.
I knew I was fucked.
Okay.
I knew that there was, I wasn't just going to a hospital and sitting in a bed for, a week or so and then getting back to doing whatever my life was or getting sent home. When people called an ambulance, a lot of people were there watching the warm up or the practice, and they all come running over. And I said, if you're going to call an ambulance, you need to tell them to get a helicopter here. Like, I need to get to like Melbourne Hospital as soon as possible because I'm in a really, really bad way. I couldn't move my legs, couldn't really feel anything. It felt like I said, it just felt like I was wrapped in cotton wool because it was, I guess when you can feel your lower limbs and then you can't, maybe it sends a message to your brain that like that's the feeling. Maybe you're wrapped in cotton wool because you can't feel, you can't move. I can't really explain it, but yeah, they ended up getting an ambulance out there, and my mates had called my fiancée Alicia, who you know well.
Yeah.
And they come out, they rushed, they were on their way, and they probably hit 150 on the freeway to get there. And yeah, I had this crazy out of body experience, which I've never experienced before. Nothing's given me that, no hallucinogenic, nothing like this before. But when my fiance come running over from the car, our good friend Brooke, she was carrying my newborn son who was only 10 weeks old, and for that moment when I first saw both of them, I feel like I blacked out, and I was looking at myself on the ground through Riot's eyes, and it was pretty daunting, pretty scary to think that like my 10-week-old son has just had his able dad taken away from me taken away from him, sorry, because I selfishly wanted to ride in front of him and just tick that off my own bucket list. And it was pretty scary. I sort of snapped back into my own body, and my fiance was standing above me, and I was just crying, telling her how sorry I am, and she was none the wiser. She might have thought that I just, had a crash and I was just sore, but
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I knew I was fucked.
And when you say you knew you were fucked, were you in your head, were you thinking you were never going to walk again?
I knew that I was going to be told that in the future day, like in the coming days.
Yep.
But for me, like, I like we referenced earlier, I had that injury where, the doctors and surgeons told my parents, like, you're going to have to go and say goodbye to him, or he's not going to be able to eat by himself. He's not going to be able to do this. Like, my brain injury was so severe, but I've proved people wrong before. I've learned to walk, as a child, which we all do, and then had to learn to walk again after this brain injury. And it's like, I'd like to believe that, and I didn't doubt myself for a split second, that I would be able to prove people wrong. And then, we've both got the honour of knowing a good friend of ours, Josh Wood, who's defied the odds of spinal cord injury himself, and having him in my corner and hearing his story, I knew that like if I had just surrendered to what I am about to be told, then I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And I'm not that type of person, and I feel like any motorcycle rider kind of loves to be told, "You can't do that, man. It's too big. It's too gnarly." Well, that's where it's our time to shine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to be told, "Mate, you'll never walk again," and I had to argue with the surgeon when he did tell me that. I said, "Oh, mate, look, I can feel a little bit in my right foot now." And this was, 2 weeks after my injury, and he kinda it's almost like he wanted to break me, but he just kind of wanted to shut me up at the same time. He just turned around and kind of said with no care in the world, "Oh, mate, I'll give you a 30% chance of walking again." And I thought to myself, like, "Fuck you, mate. Like, you could have told me I've got 1% chance, and I'm gonna make it my life mission to prove you wrong." And
I'm
like I
glad you
did it.
I'm glad you reference Josh Wood there, because he's one of the guys I've got as a guest on this podcast down the track, because he had
Yeah,
that harrowing snowboarding crash back in, gosh, go and say 2003 or 2004, and those doctors were telling
2000.
2000, those doctors were telling his
Yeah,
mum it was time to turn off his life support, and she just
yeah.
fought for her son. And and Woody now walks basically unassisted, chases his lunatic son around the skate parks. uh, and but
And around
importantly,
backstage at Freestyle Kings events.
anyone that has a spinal injury in our world, in our kind of action sports world, that's the first person people call, or he calls them, right? Because he just has
Yeah,
lived the horror story, has lived the doctors telling him he was never going to walk, never going to do anything, was going to be a vegetable. And I'm glad you gave Woody his flowers, because he's been an incredible part of this action sports community in the behind the scenes
definitely.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, he certainly has. And look, I was so lucky to have called Woody a friend, for multiple years before my injury. How I actually come about Woody, I heard his story on a podcast on Gypsy Tales, and it wasn't his recovery that, like, let's say, lured me to him. It was how proud he is to be a dad, and how proud he is of his son, and how much he kind of just realized that, like, life's not that important unless you've sort of got that love for someone or for your son. You know what I mean? And that's where I reached out to him and said, "Man, like, I'm incredibly proud to hear your story. Um, like, let's be mates." And we were, and it was, yeah, to have an injury and have him in my corner and have his mum in my fiance's corner, and helping us with advice was so special, man.
How dark did the darkest of days get? I know I asked Mitch Tripney to describe Mitch Tripney, but like if I was to ask Nathan Brown to describe you, it would be just overwhelmingly positive attitude, inspirational, and I think great dad and great partner, because I spent a lot of time with you and your kids, so I've got to see that firsthand. But behind closed
Thank you, mate.
doors, how dark did it get?
Not very. I'll be
Good.
100% honest. It was almost like a new awakening to me. And look, don't I'm not going to say there wasn't any dark days,
Yeah.
but they definitely come. They come later after my injury, and it wasn't it wasn't due to my injury. It was in the early days I had so much support, so many people reaching out, and it was almost like a secondary life that I got to live in. Like, "Hey, dude, I get to hold my son." Like, if I'd stayed on the bike and broken my neck, like, I might not be able to use my arms and actually give my son a cuddle. So in my mind, I was like, "Well, what do I like? I don't have anything to be upset about, really. Like, I things are going to change and they're going to be a bit different, but still to this day, I don't believe that I have anything to be upset about in from my injury. And there are things that are hard and stressful, and I've never really explained them to people, but it's not the fact that I have a spinal cord injury or anything like that, or, like I can't go back to my job, or I can't ride my dirt bike. Like, none of that stuff really phases me too much. It's, when I'm out somewhere and I can't chase after my kids because they're a hell of a lot faster than me, that's crazy anxiety and a lot of stressful. But I don't really vent that to people because it's not that I feel like people will be like, mate, like, look at what you got, look what you got back. But, people haven't lived in my shoes, and it's the dark days come, like I said, much later in my injury. It was once we were home and, once we had a second child, my beautiful daughter, Chevy Rose. And, it was not being able to be there as much for my partner when we were struggling to get a full night's sleep and things like that. Because if I was super tired, my body would give me nerve pain and things like that. And that's when I couldn't sleep, and I'd have to take medication, which basically turned me into a zombie.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't the loving, caring partner, and I wasn't the passionate dad. But I had to find a balance between being furious and angry because of the amount of pain I was in, and and being a zombie. So I had to find a space in between where I could manage the pain a little bit, but I was also still pretty forgetful of what was there were things I'd forget, appointments I'd forget, things like that, because the drug that I was taking would basically just wipe your memory. It was pretty gnarly days, and I didn't have the luxury at that time to be able to drive a car, or things like that. I was still getting taxis everywhere, and I couldn't walk around and stand up like I can now. It was yeah, those were the days that were a bit dark. But as a dad, I didn't want to you know, sort of make them vocalized dark days, because, I knew that my fiance was having trouble because she was up 3 times a night with our daughter, and, I didn't want the attention. I'd had the attention for, 18 months or 14 months prior, and I wanted, people to care more for my fiance at this point. So the dark days, I did what I tell everyone not to do, and I sort of sat in silence with them. So yeah, that was a bit tough there, but
Tell me
yeah,
about.
I
They
mean,
say behind every great man is is an even greater woman, and your rock in through all of this, your beautiful fiance Alicia. Like how immense was she during this process and continues to be?
yeah. So look, I wouldn't have had the recovery I have had without Leishman Wright. There's no doubt about it. Um, especially like if we didn't have my son, I would have said to Leish, look, I completely get it. We just bought a house, we've done everything, but you deserve an able-bodied and someone that can chase you around, husband or fiance, whatever it might be. And I know that she just would have laughed at me and probably told me to fuck off. And she's not leaving my side. And that's the type of woman she is, man. She's as tough as nails. And she had a not just one child to look after. At that point, it was me as well. So she'd come and visit me every day in rehab until she was actually able to move in and live with me there. But she had a a newborn son that she was breastfeeding, and she's still trying to find her way as a mother, and care for a newly disabled paraplegic boyfriend, or and it was super tough on her. And I say to everyone, it was harder on her than it was on me. And she's just the kind of tough nut that says, "Oh no," but you know what? It was hard on us both, just differently. Because she doesn't want the attention for it. She just wants life to be as normal as we can make it. And it's just goes to show how true and strong and special she really is. So yeah, look, behind every man every good man there is a amazing partner, that's for sure. And our family dynamic is as strong as it is because of how strong she is. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I hear to that. So shout out to Leishu. I hope she's listening. When this comes out on all your podcast
Yeah, she
streaming
will.
platforms, of course. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
You, I thought I met you in one of your first outings out of hospital. It was my very first Freestyle Kings tour in, I think, April 2023 at Rod Laver Arena. And my new boss at the time, Josh Henner, was like, I need you to go and meet this guy, Mitch Tripney. He's in a wheelchair, just had a bad accident. Can you get him into the car park and bring him up to his seats? And I was like, yeah, no worries. I kind of heard about it briefly, but I'd spent so long in the Nitro Circus world, I didn't look a lot at the kind of very grassroots level of FMX talent. But it turns out you have a very different version and timeline of when we met at Marvel Stadium in 2019. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so at the time I was riding for a freestyle team in Darwin. I was just back and forth on a plane whenever they had shows. And the guy that was running that wanted to come down and see how Nitro Circus do their thing because he was wanting to get. Hey,
you're a spy. He was.
I was a secret spy, man.
Yep.
I was a secret spy. But so he come down to that, and we went to Nitro at Marvel, and I rang up Fracco, who was the mechanic for Nitro Circus. I said, mate, we're here a bit early. Let's have a beer. And so he
Fracco's never met a beer he hasn't liked, Fracco.
Yeah, that's right, mate. He's a good fella, isn't he?
Legend.
He halfway through, I think maybe our second or third frothy, he goes, mate, can you and George do me a favour? Do you mind just going and being the people they pull out of the crowd? He's like, I think these beers have knocked me a little bit maybe, and I don't think I should be doing it. So, he introduced me to you, and you said, mate, I need you to wear this hoodie, and you need to wear this one, and you need to sit here, and we're going to pull you out of the crowd, and, you got to act surprised. And so that was actually the first time I met Nathan Brown, mate.
I do apologise for not remembering you at that time, but I'll have my defence lawyer represent me here. One of my
you're gonna need it, mate.
One of my nicknames at Nitro Circus was Tickets because I used to just sling free tickets for everything. And one of the jobs I had to do at every show was put these. We weren't allowed to call them plants; they were called volunteers. So they had to be in a very specific seat. My boss at the time was like, "I need them on this aisle so they can get the best camera shot of the guys, and they have to have easy access to." The stadium floor to come on and pretend to be the stuntman on either the BMX or Cam Sinclair's dirt bike. Didn't end up well for a lot of people, but that's the story for another day. So we always just used to get friends of friends, and it was really easy in Australia, New Zealand, and even America. It would be someone who like Kevin Bacon, 7 degrees of separation. The mechanic's mate Trip is the plant or the volunteer in this instance. When we went to Europe, I think the second time, Nitro Circus Europe 2013, we went to a whole bunch of places where we didn't know people. And one time, I haven't told this story publicly, but one time in Glasgow, Scotland, we had no volunteers. We didn't have a Mitch Tripney. So I actually had to go, or the commentator had to pull out real people from the crowd. And then I had to take these guys backstage and explain to them, hey, you're not really doing this trick, just so you know. We need your jumper. We're going to put it on our guy, and we'll send you back to your seat after, and you'll pretend that you're a hero and you've done this trick. So, gonna go the hydro. Cam Sinclair, I think his bike bogged out at the top of the takeoff lander, and all 4 guys fell, whatever that is, 10 feet to the concrete floor, like busted up real bad. And 3 of them ended up in hospital because of it. It was horrific scenes. And so I'm trying to explain to this Scottish bloke, you're just going to have to go sit in another seat. Okay. Please just just don't talk to anyone about it. Just pretend everything's okay. And then it ended up picking up by the national news in Scotland, and there was this big headline. I'll dig it up for a little short. Horror at the hydro it was, and somehow the media had got this one specific guy's number, and to this day, people still believe he was one of the guys who got hurt because he pretended that he was in hospital in an accident, and he's quoted in this newspaper story about how he made this from an injury. So that was about the last time, or almost last time we did the volunteers in the crowd, because that was funny. I'll see if I can dig it up. I'll send it out. Yeah, but I remember the headline: "Horror at the hydro."
That's unreal. Good on him for playing his role till the end, mate.
Yeah, thank you for being a volunteer in 2019. But so 2023, I got to meet you and kind of got an insight into your story and your life, and just really admired you. And we spent a lot of time talking. I know you came to Freestyle Kings Gold Coast whilst you're up at doing some rehab on your injury, and I think did I meet Leisha's parents that time? I think as well, and we've
at the coffee shop.
We've talked about doing this together for a long time, and how important is kind of being around the moto and FMX community post accident. How important has that been for your recovery?
Yeah, it's pretty crucial to me, to be honest with you, because well, for more than one reason. Like, the people that eat, sleep, breathe, live the same passion that you do, they're such a strong network of people that are going to support you when you do have those dark days. So that's super important to me for that reason. But just to be able to get back around what I love and what I grew up loving and share that with my fiance, my children, stuff like that. It's cool because, like my son now loves watching dirt bikes, not really phased on riding them, which I'm pretty happy with. But, he's a mad Robbie Madison fan. Like he picked out this shirt for me to wear because he thinks that this is Matto's shirt. But he's a Matto fan from Matto's book, not from there you go. From Matto's kids book, not his YouTube or anything like that. But though Matto reached out when I broke my back, Cam Sinclair reached out when I broke my back, and so on and so forth. And just to have people that, I might inspire, that I actually looked up to in these younger years, it's a really, really unique and special feeling.
Yeah. I think I get goosebumps hearing you talk about that because, I touched on it at the start of this episode. I always envisaged that this podcast would be a lot of really, really famous and inspiring people, just because that's the network.
Yep.
22 years in the industry, I've got a pretty handy celebrity phone list in the action sports world, but I never questioned that the first guest should be someone like you, someone who is not well known. There'll be a lot of people, I hope, listening to this who have not heard Mitch Tripney's story before, but there's no question in my mind that you are more inspiring than all the famous people that I know and guys who've had decorated and storied careers, because you're a guy who has, you said it, you've had to learn how to walk 3 times. Like, I don't know how many people on the whole planet have had to learn to walk 3 times, but there can't have been many.
Yeah, it's pretty unique, and hopefully it stops there. I don't want to have to learn for a 4th time, because let me tell you, it takes its energy out of you. But yeah, it's if something good was to come out of it, and there has been plenty, I'll be honest, the amount of family time I get with my children, I haven't missed a breakfast in 3 years, things like that. It's really special. But, if there is something that people can get out of my story, and it's a little bit of inspiration or a reason to keep going and not quit, and, okay, let's move the goalpost. We can't do this like we used to. How can I still be involved? And that's where, emceeing is important for me. Like, I MC freestyle motocross shows now. I've done some for Josh. I now do them at Inspire Change Crew. I'll go and talk in front of a crowd as like a motivational speaker or keynote speaker, things like that. It's being a freestyle rider, there's no denying it. We're show offs. We like being the center of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And, now I get to be the center of attention when I go and talk to a crowd. And, I'm not so much wowing them like I used to, but maybe I'm inspiring them. Maybe I'm helping someone, going through a really tough time. And for, that half an hour, they forget about their dramas and focus on mine and think, well, hang on, maybe, not being in the Division 1 football team isn't that bad,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. And to me, that's what I believe this has sort of happened for.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like if you had a time machine and could go back to Feb 4th, 2023, you maybe don't change too many things, eh?
Nothing,
Far out.
nothing.
That is just so wild.
I'll play the cards I'm dealt,
Yeah.
and I'll turn them into winning cards somehow.
Wow. Tell us about
And I
Inspired Change Crew and how that kind of helped you. You talk about how you're helping others, but how did that help your kind of recovery and keep you around the dirt bikes? Like, how important is that to you?
yeah. So Inspire Change Crew is it's actually like a couple, a married couple, and they foster children. They live with 13 children at any given time.
Dude, that sounds like me on a Freestyle Kings tour.
Yeah, you would be taking care of a few more
Adult children.
although they yeah, that's exactly right, mate. But yeah, so what they do is their focus is to basically, they're not trying to take children away from their families. That's not the goal at all. But if, a family can't take care of their child because of, drug abuse or bad habits or, things like that, well, they will take that child on, and they do that plenty, and they've done it a lot, and they've actually adopted some of these children now that they're of age. They're 18 and older, they're their legal guardians. And, I think that Cal and Bindi, both of them have always loved action sports. And, they were a really good friend of a good friend of ours who's passed away named Dancy. He's an OG in the freestyle motocross world. And, they thought maybe we start freestyle motocross shows, and that's how we will get, youth that are at risk in their own home to come and check out what we do and to learn about what we do. And so they've started doing these freestyle motocross shows, and now they've got BMX shows in the same, the one demo, which is just extraordinary. And from there they've managed to help a lot of children learn, different skills at a skate park, to learn how to ride a dirt bike, and all these people are now really wanting to be a part of this team. And whether it's helping clean up the airbag or setting up, packing down, selling merchandise, all these little roles that these kids are now involved in is it is inspiring, changing their life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we're going to talk. I know you still want to ask me a bunch of questions. Like, I was a young kid working on the Crusty tour. I was a youngish adult who didn't do a lot of right things on the Nitro Circus tour. But when I started at Freestyle Kings at the end of 2022, I was a dad at that point, and my kind of whole outlook on life really changed. And you kind of feel a bit more deeply, and people like the Inspire Change Crew, you can't underestimate how powerful the skate, BMX, and FMX community is for youth that might be being led astray or for whatever reason. Because all the guys in the dirt bike world and the BMX world, not a lot of them were great students. That they all make their careers out of being told they can't do something, so they go and do it. You said it earlier in the episode, like they just wanted to ride the dirt bike or BMX at the skate park. And so being able to relate, we just did a bunch of stuff with the PCYCs on the Freestyle Kings regional tour, and I think it resonates. It's so powerful. Like, I find myself in this pretty privileged position where I sit with the Freestyle Kings, but with that privilege comes a kind of certain responsibility to give back to the youth, and I really enjoy that, and I think I enjoy it even more because I have this new set of emotions as a dad, which, we always
Yeah.
used to do the Make-A-Wish and all that other kind of Beyond Blue, all the charities used to do that, but I probably didn't appreciate how powerful that messaging was until I became a father myself, and I think that's why I admire what the
Yeah.
Inspire Change crew are doing, and I think it's such a perfect platform for you to kind of get what you need to get out of dirt bikes, but also to give to people a lot of your life lessons, and you touched on it, like people can listen to your story and fuck, life isn't that bad. Look what this guy's had to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, like, just to go back to what you were saying then about, skateboarding and BMX and stuff like that, and, I know that the area that I grew up in, where would you find the kids that were struggling with their home life? They were always at either the skate park or the dirt jumps. And it's an easy way to get involved with people that are trying to better themselves, whether it is just get better at riding a bike or, learning new tricks or jumping their bike, whatever it might be. School's a bit daunting for people like that. It was for me. So,
Yeah.
to still want to better yourself in something that is a little bit different, a little bit, you know, um, off center, let's call it, not just playing football or
Yeah.
those type of ball sports. Yeah, it's cool to be able to influence those people as well.
Yeah, that's mad. Hey, growing up, who was your favorite? Let's have a bit of fun. Who was your favorite freestyle motocross rider growing up?
I've got to say, Big Daddy Deegan. I Yeah, I feel like Deegs was because I always saw myself as like, a bit of an outcast, you know, not so all my friends wanted to be footballers and firefighters, stuff like that. And I didn't really want to be any of that. So um, I resonated with Deegan who has said in multiple podcasts and interviews that he was the outlaw, the outcast, sorry. And yeah, he had to sort of make his own path and pave his own way.
Yeah, I mean, he's no doubt Brian Deegan is on the Mount Rushmore of most influential people in the freestyling sport. Like you kind of forget because what you and I have lived it basically, or you've lived it your whole life, and I've lived it for half of my life. But the sport of freestyle motocross, I think it is debated a little bit, but I think the majority of the industry says freestyle motocross started in 1995 with the Crusty Demons VHS. That's the theory I support. There's a really good freestyle motocross page, the Book of FMX, Geordie from Germany, who is
Yep.
documenting the sport's history at the moment. And I encourage anyone who's listening to this, go and check that out because he's got his own podcast and he's doing some incredible things and, reliving a sport that is only 30 years old. Like, I wrote a few,
Yeah.
believe it or not, Trip, I did do some fact checking before this. I was going to pride myself on not too much fact checking. Skateboarding in the 50s, BMX in the 70s, motocross 1924, supercross 1972. The X Games started in 1995 and it had bungee jumping, inline skating,
Yeah.
climbing, street luge. It wasn't till 1999 that dirt bikes appeared in X Games, and I think that was the kind of moment where the sport really kind of skyrocketed. It was an underground phenom with Crusty Demons, but it went mainstream in 1999. So I think some people like to call that the kind of birth of FMX, but Krusty's deserve the credit for me.
Yeah, I could agree 100% there. And look, from 99 onwards, you look how good X Games got and how much bigger it got because people couldn't see. You could go to a motocross track and see someone jumping a dirt bike, but were they doing freestyle tricks? Like, not really. But to go to a skate park, you could see someone skate, you could see someone ride a BMX bike, stuff like that. So I think that that's the exciting part with freestyle motocross, and it's going to stay that way because not everyone has a compound. Not all motocross tracks have freestyle motocross setup where you could just go and park and watch. So, for what Josh is doing with Freestyle Kings, bringing that dynamic, that show to a town near everyone, it's so special. It's so cool. And, to have Maddo, as a big part of it. Adelberg, 20 X Games medals? Like, it's insane. And to have that come to a small country town, like I said, near anyone, that's like credit to Josh and his team. And, that's insane. It's crazy to see that. And that all stemmed from the 99 X Games.
Yeah, no question. Now, Trip, who's your favourite rider to watch? It's kind of like people ask me this question all the time, and I say I give them the same answer. It's kind of like asking me to choose my favourite child. It's a question that I might think about internally, but probably won't verbalise. But who's your favourite rider or riders to watch at the moment?
So, I mean, like I mentioned before, Adelberg, you can't go past him. He's number one in the world for pushing limits. There's no one else doing 120-foot front flips, especially with no hands. Things like that. That's just berserk. You don't call him Big Trick Bob for no reason. As far as style goes, Pat Bowden, can't really argue there. That's he's so effortless and whatnot. He's always very enjoyable to watch. Muggins is great. He's so tall, it makes every trick look 4 times bigger than it should.
Yeah, like Joel Bouchin in the 2000s, just a guy, the big guy on a dirt bike by half a foot.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Another great rider to watch is Callum Shaw. The extension on all of his tricks is almost alien-like.
Yeah.
It's just everything's pointing the wrong way. It's past vertical. It's just, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. He was one of the guys when I started on the FK tour. I'd never heard of Callum Shaw, and I was just like, holy shit, who is this bloke?
Yeah.
There was a couple, young Rye Davies was coming through the ranks, and then I knew Pat. I've really appreciated spending the last 4 years with Adelberg, who, he dipped in and out of Nitro Circus shows whilst I was there. And it was for no other reason than he was kind of more focused on the contest scene, and to see his bag of tricks and his extension and his style, like, I just look at him as, when it's all said and done, does he go down as the greatest freestyle motocross rider to ever lace on a boot? Like, his resume is starting to suggest that. Like, yeah, there's more decorated and storied careers. Like, you look at what Travis Pastrana has done as an example, but Bobby's bag of medals at the end of it, and then you get to go and see him in little country towns in Australia, like you mentioned, Orange, Griffith, Coffs Harbour. It's pretty amazing. And then, Maddo, again, like my first Crusty tour in 2005, Maddo was the up-and-coming punk with the fresh Red Bull helmet, and to think, that's 21 years ago now, I get to tour with him, his amazing wife, Amy, and his 3 sons. It's just, it's a special collection, the Freestyle Kings. I'm kind of glad that I got adopted into the family 4 years ago.
Yeah, and a big shout out to his sons as well, Cruz and Jagger, and even Rocco. Man, Rocco's a funny kid, like super cool kid. But Cruz and Jagger, like backflipping 65s and 80s. You ain't gonna see that at any local show.
Well, I think they're the only 2 in the world that do it in front of an audience. It's you touched on it earlier. How are you and Leash going to feel if Riot, how's Riot now? Is he 4, almost 4?
He's 3.
Yeah. So
almost 4. Yeah, he'll be 4 in November.
If he kind of picks up your love for dirt bikes and wants to start jumping dirt bikes, how's that going to make you feel when and if that time comes?
So, I mean, there's a few different sides to this as well. Like, first of all, if I can pass down something that I was so passionate about to my son, and it is just a hobby, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
But also he's in a very lucky position that, he's probably going to have access to some of the best in the world
Yeah.
that'll help coach him, in a way, but he will also be very well educated on what can happen if it goes wrong
Yeah.
because he's seen it firsthand. And, we have hours and hours of footage of me, just trying to get from a wheelchair to my bed,
Yeah.
then from a wheelchair to be able to stand up with all these braces on and stuff like that. So, if he does want to ride, I want to be able to give him the freedom to make that choice. Um, like I said earlier, he's not overly like he likes to watch. He's not overly inquisitive about riding his dirt bike.
Yeah.
Our daughter Chevy Rose, you can't get her off it. She just wants to
Trouble.
ride that QR50. Yeah, man, she's the weapon of the family so far. But look, they'll be very well educated on it, and that's not going to be my upbringing with dirt bikes was all on me. So it was a fuck it, just huck it situation, like whether it was the backflip, I didn't have foam pits and stuff like that. It was, I wanted to help a mate of mine progress, and he said, "Oh, I don't know if I should buy this airbag landing," and I just threw myself in the deep end and said, "Mate, if you buy it, I'll backflip it first day." And he brought it, and 12 months later, it rocked up at his house, and I went, "Fuck, I said that, didn't I?" And I'm a man of my words, and I went for it, and it took me 3 goes, but I got it, and yeah. So look, they'll be educated, and I'll never tell him he can't do anything,
Yeah.
Because I feel like that'll stick with him forever. If I did say, whether he takes it as dad doubts his ability to do something or dad doesn't want him to live a dangerous life,
Right.
is that then going to make him go, well, I'm going to go to, let's say a life of crime because that's a different kind of danger,
Yeah.
So if that's what he wants to do, we'll go all in and we'll be there with the big, like all the safety equipment, all the safety measures will be in place. Every risk will be as calculated as I can make it, or as our friends can make it. And if he wants to do that, or he wants to do ballet, I've said from day one, if ballet is what he wants to do, then I'll be there with the 221 doing it with him. As long as he knows that he's got full support from his mother and me, that's all that
They'll
matters. So
they'll
if it's
achieve
dirt
whatever they
bikes,
want to achieve. That's why, you listen to Rob and Amy Madison talk about the boys, and they don't, I mean, they
yeah,
do get nervous because it's a dangerous sport. Everyone gets nervous, but they just talk about how
yeah,
well practiced, they're being trained by their father, who happens to be one of the greatest dirt bikers who've ever done it. And Matto's trained those boys up, but don't
yeah,
underestimate how much work Amy has done behind the scenes. And then also, you mentioned that they get all the best dirt bike riders in Southern California at their house on a daily basis, a lot of whom Matto has
mm,
taught how to flip over the years. And, to think,
yeah,
I would say Riot is probably kind of like Josh Wood's son AJ. He's got access to the best in the business to kind of forge a career like that. And
yeah,
with the Matto boys, it's kind of somewhat inevitable that Rocco might maybe not be a dirt biker, but he's probably going to be hosting dirt bike shows.
yeah,
He still rips on his bike, but he's just such a charming and funny human. And I think everything the Freestyle Kings brand is about, stems from Josh and Meg's Hannah, the Ma and Pa of the show. But secondly, it comes from that family vibe that the Matto family have cultivated, and it's a big badge of honor for me to kind of represent that FK brand like I have been the last few years. And it's not without its kind of complications, because once upon a time I used to count the days till tour started. Now I count the days till they're over, and it's not because I don't enjoy it. I still love it, but like you said, I'm like you, Trip. I'm a dad first. I'm a husband second, and then my job's third. So I love getting home, but I do love
yeah,
helping build the FK brand. It's a good time.
yeah. And while we're on the topic of that too, and like our family orientated it is with Freestyle Kings, like, you and Josh and Megs have rolled the red carpet out for myself, my son, my fiance, stuff like that many times at these events. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Freestyle Kings for that.
Oh, mate, too
Yeah,
kind,
like that.
easy.
It's really been special.
We also had a bit of fun at Hot Wheels Melbourne, didn't we, last year?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, we got a milestone over over that little that show. Got rid of Riot's bottle. So yeah, thank you very much for your input there. That was that, and he has not asked for it since.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my daughter's about 8 months older than my oldest is about 8 months older than yours. So when you asked me if we could potentially have a monster truck destroy Riot's bottle to get rid of the bottle, I was like, say less, mate. I know the feeling of how hard that is, and yeah, that's special. I know that clip went viral as well. So Riot little.
Yeah, it did very well.
Watching his bottle go up in smoke at Rod Laver Arena. We didn't put that in the H&S plan, but we got away with it. So, mate,
yeah,
I was going to wrap this up and say thank you and get a final word in from you, but I'm going to let you ask me some questions about the Crusty Demons tour if you so desire.
I desire.
2 questions,
trust me,
maybe 3.
Oh, come on, Brownie. Give the people what they want, mate.
Go on, 4.
I'm sure that everyone has this question. I'm sure this is at the top of the list. Who was the wildest in the after parties in the Crusty days?
Okay, so I started on the 2005 Crusty Demon 10th anniversary tour. I was only 21 myself. I'm 44 now. No, 22 I was. 21 when I started the job, 22 when I started the tour. The first week at that job, the tour went to New Zealand, and I was just running the stock for the Crusty clothing brand, and I wasn't needed on that tour. And I think it was 2nd or 3rd day, I got a call from the athlete manager asking me, and remember, this is 2005, so no one had internet on their phones. So the athlete manager calls me and says, "Hey, I need you to help me find a private security guard because Larry Linkogle has just chased our current one around the tour bus with a machete, and he doesn't want to do the job anymore." So I was like, "Holy shit, what is this stuff? Who is Larry Linkogle?" And then a week later, the tour ended, and he was the face of the Crusty clothing brand that I was working on. Gnarly dude. He just rocks into the office and starts rummaging through my my stock of this clothing brand. And I was like, oh, God. And he's got the big skull tattoo on his head. I'm like, God, I can't let him not take this because what if he does have that machete? You didn't really, I'm not really answering the question, but that was my introduction. Larry was the first athlete that I kind of met. And that was after he chased the security guard around on a machete. I mean, those after parties were wild. Mike Jones was pretty good at them, I think.
Yeah, right.
The young Aussies kind of packed a punch at the after parties. I think that let me just rewind it back a bit. That because I did a bit of reflecting on this the other day. That 2005 Crusty tour, changed the course of FMX history, and I'll tell you why. Because the Metal Militia Breakaway Tour happened at the start of that year. So that 10th anniversary Crusty tour, which was originally headlined by like Twitch, Deegan, Ronnie Feist, and etc., they broke away to do their own Metal Militia tour with a rival promoter. So it was in modern day terms, think Live Golf and the PGA Tour, or more so from a Aussie sporting Super League and the ARL in rugby league. So there was basically two of the exact same show, sport, golf, footy, or freestyle motocross. All the good, well-known guys were the Metal Militia guys, no question. So my boss kind of rejigged the tour and changed the headline acts to Nate Adams and Mike Metzger. Pretty big names. I think Nate was just fresh off becoming the first guy to beat Travis Pastrana in competition. I'm pretty sure that I didn't fact check that because I didn't know we were going down this. And then they both got hurt on the eve of the tour. So all of a sudden, Robbie Madison, Bilko, Sinclair, Steve Minnie, Joel Bouch, and all these guys, Chucky Norris was one of the reserves. All these guys kind of got thrust into a limelight that they maybe weren't 100% ready for. I think they would have found their way anyways, but like Robbie Madison was jumping that Crusty Night of World Records, which was my first show, and he was desperate to jump the big bike, and I think he still holds 3 of those records to this day. A jump on a 125, a trick on a 125, and then a distance on a 250. And so that changed the trajectory because, you know, Bilko, Matt Shoebring, Cam Sinclair, they were all competing on the Dew Tour. After that tour, Matto would go on to do all those records he did. And Matto had a tiny profile, but none of those other guys outside of the kind of industry, no one knew who they were. And, you know, I think 2.5 years later, Bilko was the first non-American to win X Games gold. And you think about like how the Aussies dominate now. It was one.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it?
It never used to be like that. Like, yeah, you've got to give up that first generation, Kinnard and Uric and Jake Bowen, who threw down at all those contests. But that 2005 Crusty Tour really developed those guys into, you know, world champions. And I would always say, Kinnard and Co walked, Bilko and Matto ran, and now the Adelberg, Jacko, the Richards, they're sprinting because of what the guys before them did.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
So, yeah, so I didn't really answer the question. Those were wild days in 2005. Like, I didn't, again, at the time I was young and a bit naive. Like, I'd never really been anywhere in Australia. Like, I'd been to Queensland a couple of times with my family, and I went to Melbourne for a cricket game once. So all of a sudden I found myself driving through the middle of Australia, going from Darwin to Alice Springs with the Crusty Demons, and having to knock on Seth's door or Mad Mike Jones's door at 5 a.m. on a Friday morning after a search for a Crusty Babe party on a Thursday night that went till 3 a.m. None of that was a lot of fun. So, but I wouldn't change anything, but it wasn't, it was very different times, and, you know, it was a bit, you know, dark and demonic, like that's the name of it. I saw some stuff that I probably wish I didn't see, but I won't go naming names on that front. But
yeah, don't mention that.
But yeah, Bilko, Steve Minnie, Cam Sinclair, Matto, that I became friends with them on that tour, and 22 years later, they were at my wedding 3 months ago. So like that, the bond we forged in that tour, and they were always the guys, that little Aussie crew plus Adam Jones were the kind of first guys that welcomed me into that, you know, that fraternity. Like, you know, Crossies was a lot. It's the dirt bikers and it's the people who run the tour, two very separate groups, and, you know, that evolved over the years. And then I think, you know, that's what made Nitro special, was we're all together and all mates, and I see that tenfold on Freestyle Kings now. So, but watching Matto's career has been really fun. Watching Bilko's highs and lows, Sinclair's ex-fighters crash, like we were getting phone calls saying he was dead. Watching that redemption arc, and then seeing him return and do the double backflip. You were probably at that first Melbourne Nitro Circus show in 2010 when Travis did his first double backflip since the X Games, and he got in so much trouble because Sinclair did his return backflip, and Trav's like, fuck it, I'm doing it as well. And then they swapped jerseys after and did laps around, and so Trav's ripping around Rod Laver Arena with a big Rockstar logo on his back.
Oh yeah.
So
I heard something about that. Yeah.
We had to kill all that vision and all those photos, but a lot of it still got out anyways. But yeah, there's a classic photo of Trav and Sinclair somewhere on the internet where Sinclair's got the big Red Bull jersey on and Trav's got the Rockstar. Like that was, yeah, that's a moment I'll never forget, even though it was 16 years ago. I don't even know what the question was.
Yeah.
I don't know how we ended up there.
That's a good thing about podcasts, mate. They just go on their tangents and, you know, it makes for good stories too. Like you get down rabbit holes and it's great.
Yeah, so it was
How's the
okay.
how's the like, let's call it the family dynamic of, let's say Freestyle Kings now, if you were to compare it to Nitro Circus and stuff like that, like, you briefly touched on it when you were answering that question about how the crew sort of become mates with the riders. But like I know that with Freestyle Kings, it's basically all friends working the same tour,
Yeah.
riders included.
I mean, Nitro Circus definitely had a no dickhead policy, as does FK. Or with some dickhead behavior is kind of somewhat tolerated, maybe myself included. Um, I think the big point of difference is, you know, Nitro Circus was owned and run by a guy who would tell you what to do. Um, Freestyle Kings is owned and run by a guy who literally drives the truck to the events, bumps out. Like, how can you not be motivated to do whatever it takes for this thing to succeed when you see, Josh, I'm talking about Josh, obviously, and how hard he works. And
Yeah,
I think that is, Josh being an ex-rider himself. When Nitro lost its way a little bit in the mid 2010s, it was, you know, it stopped becoming by the riders for the riders, and I think Josh has kept that
yeah,
integrity. And I'll speak freely here. I when I first started, I couldn't believe how many riders he had on and how much he was paying them. And it was so important to Josh, and still is to this day, that his riders and his crew all get to eat at the same table as he does, and it's very noble. And I think that kind of reflects on what the vibe is of Freestyle Kings. And I would never shit on Nitro Circus, because I worked for that company for 17 years, and 13 of those years were on Nitro Circus, and it really kind of shaped me in a work and professional sense, but also kind of as who I am as a human more generally. So I have very fond memories of Nitro Circus, but I really like what FK is about. And I think because I'm at a different stage in my life, I obviously haven't jumped to dirt bike, but I've kind of spent all the time with the dirt bikers and BMXs. I've done all the wrong things over that time in Nitro Circus. Like, I've had my own battle with mental health and depression, and it was mostly self-inflicted. So if I can kind of impart some of my knowledge of more of what not to do, if it's, a bit too much drinking or partying. I mean, it sounds rich. Come from anyone who knows me, no one likes a good time more than me. But I think I enjoy the seniority and the responsibility of helping drive this tour with Josh and his amazing wife Megs. It's fun. It's very rewarding. I mean, it's all been rewarding, but this is kind of, again, as a dad, because it's prize for my family, get to come home to them absolutely exhausted. But like you said, Trip, like you can't just lay in bed. You just got to go get on with it. So that would probably
that's right.
be why they're a little bit different.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, it's an unbelievable show too. Like,
Oh,
it gets better every
hardly.
time.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've been to an FK show, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that, and they get better every time.
Always evolving, man. Josh is, I've worked with promoters all over the world, and they are wired so differently to regular folk like you and me. Like, you can't explain what drives them, and their passion and their relentless pursuit of being the best in class, no matter if you're a music promoter, an action sports promoter, or any other sport. I get to work with a company that kind of promotes a few different things, but we're a company, but
Yeah,
one-off promoter guys. And Josh, I mean, his work ethic is second to none. What I've seen, it's just, I honestly, and I
yeah,
tell him, I don't know, I can't keep up with him some days, a lot of days.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, spot on. Where do you see the freestyle motocross competition scene going?
Oh, it needs I gotta be careful here. Um, it needs it needs help. It needs help. Like,
Yeah,
I'm really disappointed that this X Games League rebrand hasn't included dirt bikes. I I
yeah, that's silly.
I'm silly. I I look at what I'm probably in the minority here in this industry, but I look at what the Olympics did for BMX and skate, and
Yeah.
a dirt freestyle motocross in the Olympics is like dare to dream for me. Like that would be the absolute top thing to happen for freestyle motocross in my industry. But we don't have a contest scene. Like I think about, when I started in 2005, you had the Jew Tour, you had Red Bull X Fighters, you had all that
Yeah.
IFMX, the US competition, and then whatever the European one was. Like you could make a living just riding contests on a dirt bike.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist now. Like, and you look at Rob Adelberg's bag of medals. But you ask him, like, he loves that stuff, but you know what pays the bills more? Doing a whole bunch of demos, with
Yeah.
Freestyle Kings or going over to Russia or wherever they go. So it needs a contest injection. I've seen it kind of ebb and flow over the last 20 years, and I think everyone says about the peaks and valleys of not just freestyle motocross, the racing scene and whatnot, but, you know, I would love to see, I think, even Red Bull X-Ray, which Maddo helped promote down
Yeah.
towards his hometown. There's nothing like it at the moment. Like, what do you get? Two X Game comps, and it's just best trick as well. Like they've kind of floated in and out of freestyle runs. But you think about, like, you go back to that 2003 to 2008, those battles where everyone was coming for Travis Pastrana's title as the best in class. It was Nate
Yeah.
Adams, and then it was Jeremy Lusk, Russell, and then Levi, and then Bilko. Like all these guys, like there was a competition where Levi and I think Trav in 2009 or 2010 maybe were double backflipping during freestyle runs, like onto dirt.
Yeah.
So I think it does need that, but how that happens, I don't have the answer to that. I don't. What do you think?
So, I mean, I've got a few ideas. I definitely want to start hosting some freestyle motocross competitions. I had one that was sort of lined up, but the place I wanted to host it couldn't actually fit it in. But we're hoping to get that sorted for next year. So I'm hoping to sort of get that going down here in Victoria. It's in the summertime, so hopefully I can get some good riders to come to that. The only thing is I put it out to a couple of riders and they're like, yeah, make me an offer. And I was like, all right, here's your offer. Come down, do the best whip. You win, you get money.
Mhm.
If not, like you got to go pack them, which I get it. It costs a lot of money to travel and whatnot these days. But, if let's say a rider with a big arsenal of sponsors can get some, funds to travel, and then they can come down. Their sponsors can be involved in this competition. Where I want to do it, there's already going to be 5 to 10,000 sets of eyes on it,
Mhm.
and it's not necessarily a ticketed event, but there is going to be a hell of a lot of people there. So, to get that done would be awesome. Um, but I feel like, if we could even at like a demo, have an actual, a smaller event. And what AME did at the F1 a few years ago in Melbourne, that was pretty cool. If we could get something like that happening again, where there's already a lot of people there for motorsports. So, mate, like I'm sure they'll turn their eye when they hear a two-stroke or a four-stroke, on the limiter. Everyone does. But yeah,
We did
I feel.
Nitro Circus at the F1 one year. It was so windy and wet. I don't even think a bike turned on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Albert Park, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah,
that's Melbourne for you.
that's Melbourne. That you're looking for those 3.5 days of summer, but then they're 50 degrees. But I shouldn't shit on Melbourne like that. Sorry, mate.
No, you should, mate. It's a shit off. Oh,
Yeah, it's
I'm
an
only here
interesting
because I
time
feel
because
like I have to be.
it's a hard space out there, the events, and um, you know, selling tickets and whatnot and making money. That still has to be a priority, and that's Red Bull X Fighters was very noble in that sense that it was just a brand building exercise. But you think about like some of those locations where I went to the one at Cockatoo Island in Sydney, and then but you think about
Yeah.
like the sandstone quarry in Greece, the castle in wherever that was, I think Ireland maybe, and Maddo was ripping around in those contests, and that was
Yeah.
almost peak contest scene where it was ex-fighters, Danny Torres coming through and punching out all the Americans, Tom Padgers as well. Like you think about how many huge globally known dirt bikers were born from that series and the XMs, like Clint Moore. He's famous because he was an ex-fighters champion. Josh Sheehan, I always admired Sheeny because I think he's another guy who was so pivotal in the evolution of the Australian FMX scene, and to a lesser extent the world, because he was the first guy that I'm pretty sure that took nutrition and health and fitness seriously. And he started a
Yeah.
little training group on Nitro Circus, and they'd be at the gym instead of the pub. And I think that's I love watching the guys at FK, like Braden Davies is that modern day Josh Sheehan. He's a trainer himself, and shout out to Prime Strength. He has
Fucking beast.
he has half a dozen of the FK team on training programs, and you'll always see him in the hotel gym before dinner or the morning of the show. And the athletes are so much more professional now, and they deserve a bigger platform than just a Nitro Circus tour or a FK tour or Masters of Dirt. Like they should be getting the opportunity to go for more gold and more glory is kind of my thoughts on it. I just don't know what the answer is right now. Smarter people than me will do that, but if you could find it, getting it into the Olympics, Brisbane 2032 might be a tad optimistic, but wherever the next one is, I think that would be what the best injection for our sport that we love so dearly.
Yeah, and you're only like, now that BMX is in there, look at all the pump trucks that are popping up. Look at all the skate parks that are popping up. Like,
I
it
know
would
the
be
guy
phenomenal.
who has the contract and builds all the skate parks, the council skate parks in New South Wales, and he builds the sickest skate parks, and it's all funded, and it's stopping youth crime. It's getting kids outside. Bit harder just to plug in a motocross track, but the next step is how do we get people out and about on dirt bikes? But that Olympics has changed the trajectory, and it helped the Aussies winning a couple of medals in that, like Logan Martin and Natalia, and then Chloe the skater girl. So yeah, it's so good for the youth of today. We talked about it before we started, like trying to keep our kids off iPads and the computer. There's the answer standing
Yeah.
staring at you in your face. It's a skateboard or a BMX at the moment. Let's make that a dirt bike some way, somehow.
Yeah, and the thing is now with like all the electric bikes, it's it's going to eliminate the noise factor, which for a lot of places, the noise is what gets a backyard track shut down,
Yeah.
or
House
a
pound
backyard
Kingsway.
compound shut down. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had that conversation with him on my podcast, and yeah, it's a wild one. I've actually got a show with him this Sunday.
Oh man,
Where yeah, yeah. So that'll be good. Doing one for Inspire Change, so that'll be fun.
give it a plug.
What's that? The show?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah. So it's down in Hastings. It's called the Emergency Services Day. Let's call it that. But yeah, there'll be heaps of cool stuff there. There'll be lots of stuff for the kids to do.
Man.
We're doing a 30 to 40-minute show. We're going to obviously have X Games gold, silver, and bronze medalist Cam Sinclair there. It's going to be good times.
Good, mate. Good. Hey, leave me. I'm going to ask every one of my very special guests. Give us one parting thought that you think might inspire someone.
All right, here we go. This could bounce back to the mental health thing, but it worked for me. I thought about it for a very long time when I was, laid up in hospital beds, and that is a negative attitude is like a flat tire, and you can't go anywhere until you change it.
Mitch Tripney, I love that. I love your story. I love your attitude. I just love everything about you, mate. So thank you. Very honoured and humbled for you to always be my first ever guest on Behind the Bars. Thank you, my brother.
Thanks so much, mate. Thanks for having me on.
And we are over.